My name is Michael O'Neill, and I'm here with Maddy and we are both Senior Enterprise Account Managers here at NationBuilder, which provides leadership software to grow your community and to move it to action. Today, we're here to talk about organizing beyond Election Day, sustaining support, and driving change. And we thought this would be a great time to talk about this because over the course of 2024, we had this enormous year of elections. Over half of the world's voting population cast a ballot in an election this year, and those elections have come to pass. The dust is settling, and a lot of movements, a lot of campaigns, and a lot of candidates are thinking about what's next. Hopefully, they've taken a moment to breathe and to rest and recover. But the ones who are really looking to forge lasting change and who are looking to win in the future are thinking about what's next. And so we want to dive into that today. But first, I want to give a shout out to our customers in Australia because they are actually gearing up for a big election year in 2025, and they might have elections called as early as February. And while they might not have quite as much lead time as folks in other parts of the world might have before their next election cycle, that still gives them a couple months for some of the practices we will talk about today that will help forge a foundation of support for all different kinds of mobilizing efforts moving forward. As I mentioned, my name is Michael O'Neill, and I'm here with Maddy. We are both Senior Enterprise Account Managers here at NationBuilder, and I just celebrated my 2-year anniversary at NationBuilder, and before that, I was a NationBuilder customer for over 10 years. I love coaching people to get the most that they can out of this platform. I love geeking out about NationBuilder, and so I'm excited to get the chance to geek out with you today, both about NationBuilder, but also organizing, arguably two of my favorite topics. And so now I will kick things over to Maddy to introduce herself.
Thanks, Michael. It's lovely to be with you all here today. As Michael mentioned, I too am a senior account manager on the Europe team based in London. And like many who joined the NationBuilder team, I was previously a customer. I'm very much looking forward to discussing all things organizing with you today as you head into what I hope will be a period of well-deserved downtime following a busy election year. To give you a sense of what we'll be discussing today, we'll start off with an introduction to the term organizing, even though I'm sure everyone here is already well familiar with it. We'll then take a deep dive into NationBuilder's own organizing principles as the foundation of what our product is built on, before finally taking a look at how to unlock the power of digital organizing and a couple of tactics to get you thinking about how you can apply this into your everyday practices as early as the new year. So let's dive straight into it. Like I said, I might be preaching to the choir here, but we wanted to start off by introducing the concept. So organizing is the kind of word that is used in many contexts and can mean different things to different people and organizations. For this webinar, we're using organizing to describe the strategic cultivation of durable relationships at scale with the purpose of bringing more people into your movement, more people into your campaign, while building the leadership capacity of those already participating. So for generations, organizers have used these methods to bring people together around a common concern, a common cause, a common issue. And organizers are then able to rally those people down the line to achieve whatever shared goals you're working towards. So think of the energy from these relationships as filling up a fuel tank or a giant battery, and you'll hear a couple of metaphors like these that you then call upon to power your campaign or your organization's next fight in the year ahead. So there's a clear emphasis here on relationship building, but specifically cultivating and maintaining interpersonal relationships between yourself and your community, but also among the people within your community. So through that process, you'll be able to identify and empower organic leaders within your community with the end goal of distributing leadership responsibilities throughout. And those organic leaders that you've identified, they are the ones that will help you scale and build your power to achieve your goals in ways you could never do on your own. Because I think the main strand here as well is that it's impossible to do everything by yourself. You need to rely on others. And it's all about timing, and we'll see why in a bit. But first, why is organizing important? Organizing is very much a proven way to create profound, meaningful, and lasting change. It's how we can solve systemic issues and win against all odds, whether it's addressing an entrenched social problem or succeeding as an outsider in a political race. What makes organizing so powerful is the mindset. An organizing mindset brings people together, it aligns efforts, and it unlocks impressive benefits for organizations. So we wanted to walk you through 4 key ways an organizing mindset can transform your work. If we start with personal engagement, when you organize, you distribute leadership. You empower your community to contribute meaningfully, not just to participate in actions, but to also help you shape your strategy. So when people are asked to do meaningful work, it gives them that sense of purpose. They connect deeply with the mission, and that connection can then grow over time. There are 2 kinds of engagement that you might have heard to date: transformational organizing and transactional mobilizing. Organizations that practice transformational organizing see their supporters go through personal growth. They become more committed, they become more invested. In contrast, transactional mobilizing, where people are only really asked to show up for one-off tasks during key campaign moments, it doesn't really build that same level of dedication and connection to your cause. This personal transformation isn't just good for individuals, it's also great for organizations like your own. And supporters are then more likely to stay engaged, take on leadership roles, and move into action more efficiently and more effectively. So the question becomes, how can you ensure your supporters feel personally invested in your mission? The second key benefit of organizing is that it builds local power. And this is really crucial for sustainability and longevity. When you empower local groups to adapt and implement campaigns, you gain incredible advantages. First, it allows your organization to cover more ground geographically and better understand how issues impact different communities. That's why localized campaigns, they resonate more because they speak to the specific experiences of those communities. And by identifying and recruiting local influencers, you can amplify your impact exponentially. But building local power, it does mean more than just expanding your reach. It helps create lasting relationships. Supporters can feel a sense of belonging, which is what keeps them engaged over the long term. And local organizers, they're the ones who know their members personally. They're the ones who can then mobilize their groups more effectively and predictably when election season comes around. And so it's no secret as well that local successes can help inspire broader wins at a national level. If we look at growing your supporter base, organizing is incredibly powerful for recruitment because it relies on empowering others to bring new people into the fold. Peer-to-peer recruiting is a prime example. People are much more likely to get involved when the invitation comes from someone they know and trust, a friend, a coworker, a family member, anyone here. But recruiting isn't just about asking people to join, right? It's about giving them options. We need to meet people where they're at, and we need to be able to offer ways to get involved that align with whatever their skills and interests are. Otherwise, you do risk losing valuable talent. So think about this. Are you creating enough opportunities for people to engage in ways that work for them? And are you empowering your current supporters to help your campaign grow? Finally, organizing unlocks the collective power of your supporters. People power is what happens when everyone aligns around the same goal, combining their skills, their networks, their resources. This collective focus is what creates momentum and pressure for change. It's the magic ingredient that transforms individual efforts into a recognizable force. So when people are organized, they're very much unstoppable, and they can ally their actions to create that change that you're looking to push for as an organization. And that's really the ultimate goal of any organizing effort. I mentioned timing. And so continuing with this idea of organizing as a specific art of cultivating strategic relationships at scale to grow the power of your community, we're going to contrast organizing with mobilizing. Frequently, organizing and mobilizing are used interchangeably, But for our purposes here, they are very different, and here's why that difference is important. While both organizing and mobilizing are essential to the success of your movement, for decades now, many candidates, parties, nonprofits, and NGOs have focused almost exclusively on mobilizing, but to their detriment. By contrast, when we've seen customers make early investments in organizing style, durable relationship building, they set themselves up to be successful with their mobilizing goals. And they set up a sort of virtuous circle of organizing and mobilizing working hand in hand. So if we wanted to nail down the difference, or the key difference at least, between organizing and mobilizing to make sure that you're doing both effectively, as we've said, organizing is all about building your power, charging up that battery, and laying the groundwork for when campaign season comes so that you're then able to mobilize your supporters and put that power to work through their volunteer hours, their donations, casting their vote, attending a rally, sharing a campaign with their friends and their family, you name it, quite honestly. We don't really organize during campaigns because, and I think anyone who has worked on a campaign team will tell you, elections and other campaigns run way too fast for deep organizing. The groundwork really needs to be laid before then. I really like the metaphor that organizing is your strength and conditioning training to prepare for a marathon, whereas mobilizing a campaign is running the actual marathon. There is an art to both, but they require different activities and different prep work. Long-term movement building through organizing is what will make your campaigns more effective and have people sticking with you election after election, so you're not starting from scratch each and every single time.
Thank you, Maddie. And so, with that, we're going to talk about some of the key principles and building blocks of effective organizing. So, as we look at some of those key principles of effective organizing, there are many ways to do it well, and your organizing context is going to shape your strategy. But we have outlined for you some key principles that we believe are going to be able to help in nearly any organizing situation. And so the first is to clearly understand who and how many people you need to forge relationships with to win. And I want to be clear that organizing is very much about winning. You are building power to win, and you need to have a credible plan to win that you're able to talk about with the people that you are organizing to provide them with the motivation to invest in that relationship, to put their later on their time, their volunteer hours, other forms of investment into your movement or your campaign when it comes time to mobilize. So you are forging those relationships to win. And because this is an intensive conversation that you're having with people over time, you are not reaching out to everyone. You will never have time to reach everyone. Your job is to focus on the people who will have the greatest impact on your mission or your goal. There are 3 dimensions to that. The first to consider is where. What is the geographic boundary of your campaign? It may not always be a geographic boundary, but in the case of, like, say, an election, it's going to be an electoral unit. It might be a decision-making body. Looking outside of the electoral context, it might be a work site that you're organizing. It could be a list of party members for an internal party election. It could be a place of worship that you're attempting to organize. But this boundary, this whether it's an actual geographic boundary or whether it's a conceptual boundary, this is sometimes referred to as a structure, and it defines the field of play that you're going to prioritize in your organizing efforts. Having the support of people outside of your structure is nice, and they certainly shouldn't be turned away, but they are not the people that you are prioritizing in an organizing effort. So once you've identified the where, the next we're going to look at is the how many. How many people do you need to become supporters in order to win? How many people do you need to get on your side to achieve victory? The more contentious the issue is, and the more powerful the opposition to your movement or to your campaign, the more people you're going to need to win. And the deeper the investment you're going to need from those people to withstand that opposition, to overcome that opposition. Campaigns and movements that are facing the toughest opposition efforts should aim ideally for a supermajority of support in the structure that they're working in. Ideally, that's 90% or more of the structure you've identified above. So if you're trying to organize a work site, you want ideally 90% of the support of the workers in that work site before you take a drastic action. If whatever neighborhood or electoral district, with elections, you can win a lot of the time with 50% plus one in a first past the post election. But if you're running in a proportional scenario and you're aiming for a solid majority, then you are aiming for an even greater majority of people to support your campaign when you come time to mobilize. So then there's the who. Because, and Maddy, if you could just cue up those next two bullet points on that slide. Awesome. Thank you. So the way you get those supermajorities of support without having to talk to each and every person individually is to ideally identify those movers and shakers within the structure, who are the organic leaders that Maddy referenced before, who had the capacity to bring a lot of people along with them. If these organic leaders, these movers and shakers, if they oppose your effort, then they could really impede your campaign, your organizing effort. If they support you, they can bring a lot of people along with you. So you need to know who those people are by doing advanced research and by doing a sort of network analysis of the structure that you're organizing in. And you need to identify what their current support levels are. If they are strongly opposed, then you need to ID those people who might have a good chance of moving them and reaching out on your behalf to get them to reconsider their position and perhaps open up to other conversations. So those people that you've identified are the ones who you and your fellow organizers are going to have strategic, ideally in person, one-on-one conversations. These are the movers and shakers within the boundary or the structure that you've identified to get the number of relationships of supporters that you need to win. So those one-on-one conversations you're having with those people should identify how their own personal challenges or issues that they see in the community or the worksite or the place of worship, how those personal difficulties relate to systemic issues that you're campaigning on. Those systemic issues that your movement or campaign are trying to address. And when you've connected the personal challenges to the systemic issues, and then you propose that your campaign or your organization has a solution and a credible plan to win to address those systemic issues, you've gotten their buy-in to that idea. You should then close that conversation with an ask that will deepen that person that you're talking to and deepen their involvement in some kind of collective action that could be very simple. It could just be showing up to a group discussion or another kind of collective event. But you are closing that conversation by asking them to do something that deepens their involvement in your movement. Now, you won't be using NationBuilder to actually have those conversations because these are one-on-one and ideally in person. But you should be using NationBuilder to track who has been assigned to speak with who, whether they have done so, and what that result was. It is essential to do that kind of tracking and to do those kinds of assignments because we want to make sure that every hour that we spend in this intensive process has a maximum result. In most conversations, or in most circumstances, you won't be able to have every one of these conversations yourself. And so that's where the peer networks of your existing supporters or the supporters that you just had organizing conversations with come in. Those organic leaders that you identified and who you've won over to your side, they're going to have the largest peer-to-peer effects. And so it's important to remember that while you kick off these conversations with, or you kick off these relationships with strategic one-on-one conversations, and there's a whole body of literature on how to have organizing conversations and sort of different structures for those that I encourage people to look up on their own. But that conversation is just the start. These relationships, just like any kind of relationship, is never a one and done matter. You can use your nation to track how your supporters' commitment and their readiness might fluctuate over time. The fight for change, especially in the face of tough opposition, can be really scary. It can be really challenging. The resolve of certain supporters might be shaken by personal setbacks or movement setbacks, or maybe their commitment to your cause hasn't changed at all, but something else in their life has come up that causes them to need to step back from the campaign due to those life circumstances. You need to track those support levels and those kind of other life events for the people that you're organizing in your nation so that you can have awareness of your total capacity when mobilization time comes. If it's a matter of that they have a question about the campaign, they're questioning their commitment, then it's time to have another conversation with them, like about what are their concerns, and then, logging what the outcome of that was. If it's a life circumstance, like they're moving out of the structure, or for whatever reason they're not able to step back, then you mark that in your database and hope that at some point later on down the line, you can circle back to them and see if they are then able to participate again. So on the next slide, we're going to talk a bit about how there are tools in NationBuilder to track the kinds of activities that we've been talking about. Now, the first slide is about our sort of entire cycle of engagement that exists within the platform. And that ranges from setting goals to finding, attracting supporters, engaging with those supporters, moving people to action, identifying and equipping leaders, and then distributing leadership. That's the whole suite. Some of these focus more on organizing, and some of these points focus more on mobilizing. And so for this webinar, since we're focusing more on organizing, on that aspect of the cycle of engagement, we're just going to focus a bit on a few of these points in the platform. So we have the cycle of organizing and mobilizing. And the features most relevant to the organizing process that we've been talking about include the setting of goals. It gets back to that: how many people do you need on your side to win within your structure? Who are the people that you need to identify, and who are the organic leaders? How many people do you need to have on an organizing committee or a steering committee in order to have the number of people that you need to have those one-on-one conversations with the rest of the community to get the super majority support that you need to win? Setting goals in your nation can be really helpful for that. Paths in your nation are a great way to plot out a ladder of engagement within the software where you're setting out like a step-by-step, either stepping stones or to-do list of, for example, did you have that first organizing one-on-one conversation with them? Did they commit to a follow-up event? If the event was attending an event, did they RSVP for that event on your nation's website calendar? Did they actually attend? And then once they've completed that path of attending their first event, maybe it's asking them to become a volunteer, or would they opt into joining a volunteer onboarding session so that they're then getting what they need to be able to take more of a leadership role. So those are the kinds of paths and ladders of engagement that you can establish within your nation to track how close you are coming to your organizing goals. Tools that you have for engaging with those supporters include dynamic filters so that you can filter for different areas of concern or specific issues of concern within your structure that you know to prioritize when you're talking to them, or who else do they know within your structure so that you know who to refer to or who to ask them to speak to as you're engaging in your organizing process. What neighborhood are they in, or any number of different identifiers that might help you reach people or identify what their priorities are or what their past participation has been up to this point. coming off of a campaign, you might have a wealth of information of what events people attended and the ways that they got involved, and how you might want to ask people to build on those as you're organizing leading up to your next cycle of mobilization. We have some mass communication tools in the nation, like personalized emails and text blasts, which, while you're not sending out to thousands of people to get them to attend a rally during an organizing process, you can still send tailored emails to remind people to come to that next collective event that's maybe in a more small in-person setting, or just reminding them to take whatever action that you asked them to take that was the end result of your organizing conversation. While it might be in sort of smaller scales of audiences than you're used to working with in a mobilizing context where you're just trying to drive everyone out to vote or everyone to an event, it still can provide efficiencies as opposed to just sending texts one by one or emails one by one from either your regular email program or just from your phone. Also, you can track who clicked through, who opened, who might need a follow-up from there. And so it provides a lot of value. Also, assigning point people and is a great way to organize your outreach efforts. And as you bring in new organic leaders, who are the people that they're going to become point people for? And so, as you're identifying and equipping leaders, social capital, leaderboards, more paths, using relationships in the platform to show, all right, this person is the pastor of 5 other people. Then you can filter for who are all the people that this person is the pastor to within your nation. It provides a really powerful way of linking people together based on maybe clubs that they belong to, or the neighborhood that they're in, or a committee that they belong to within a party. And as you're doing all of this work to surface different people and different relationships in your nation, and you are having people step up into new leadership roles, you can use things in your nation, such as groups and permission sets and recruiter campaigns to distribute leadership. So you can know who are the people in your nation who are moving the needle on bringing in new people, bringing in new supporters who are having their conversations and logging those contacts and the outcomes of those conversations. And so one sort of on the next slide, and a model that we talk about in relational organizing is this lead model. And it's a term that we're throwing out here to give you the option to kind of do some more research on it yourself. We also have a lot of material on the NationBuilder website about campaigning and about the lead model in particular that we encourage people to check out. A lot of it is in a mobilizing context, but a lot of it also applies to organizing as well. And so when we talk about relational organizing and activating the personal contacts within your supporters' networks, this acronym LEAD stands for learning about your community, engaging your supporters, and developing your leaders. And through all of the tools and the conversation structures that we talked about before, you're learning about what people's personal challenges and issues might be and how they relate to the systemic issues that you're campaigning on. You're also learning about how the different people in the community structure that you're organizing relate to each other. Who do they respect as organic leaders, or that also possibly like official leadership titles that might be out there? You're learning who supports you already and who doesn't support you, who need to be reached, and who need to have those conversations to see if they can be brought to support you. You're engaging them with a credible plan to win. And then as people participate, you're developing those leaders with both responsibility within your organizing movement or your campaign, and also with responsibility and tools within your nation through those tools that we talked about, permission sets, groups, things like that. And so I will throw it back to Maddy to talk a bit more about the power of digital organizing and how that can have an impact.
And specifically, well, as well as some of the tactics that we'll look at to get you going as early as next year, like I said earlier. So first off, effective organizing isn't a one-time activity, right? It requires consistent and sustained action. Building relationships, maintaining communication, and staying engaged with supporters is all part of an ongoing cyclical process. Making sure that your supporters remain active and informed rather than fading away between key moments really does require continuous efforts. That level of consistency is what will then make your mobilization efforts more effective and targeted. We all know that during the intense pace of an election cycle, time is often focused on campaign activities such as canvassing, events, outreach, so on. That really doesn't leave much opportunity to clean, structure, or optimize your database, potentially leading to inefficiencies in the data that you have available at hand. And so a poorly maintained database can result in missed opportunities, such as failing to follow up with potential supporters or potential donors come your election cycle. That's why data is the first key to targeted and impactful mobilization efforts. Knowing who your supporters are, along with their preferences, their interests, any history of engagement you might have access to, is what allows you to craft really personalized and curated messages and strategies. Without comprehensive data, mobilization efforts, they really risk being too generic, which might not resonate as strongly with your nuanced audience, and nuanced being the key word here. And we'll talk more about tactics specific to data shortly. But that is why this post-election period that many of you now find yourselves in is the perfect time to focus on organizing and improving your systems. With the pressure of campaigning gone, there's definitely more bandwidth now to analyze and refine your database, refine your strategies that you'll be looking to push forward in the future. Preparing now is what ensures you're better equipped for the next cycle, turning downtime into an opportunity for growth and efficiency. So what are some of the things you can do to start setting yourselves up for success? So the ballots have been cast, the votes have been counted, the results are in. This is a milestone moment, and very much the culmination of tireless efforts from countless people who have been involved throughout. And so whether the outcome aligns with your goals or presents new challenges, this moment offers an opportunity. It's a time for reflection, for celebration of the journey, and really reimagining what lies ahead. So what comes next? If we were to explore how to make the most of this pivotal moment, first things first, obviously, some downtime. I think campaigns are relentless, and the people involved, whether that be yourselves, volunteers, leaders, supporters, they definitely deserve the time to rest and recharge. But as you pause, it's also a good time to start thinking ahead. What happens next for your movement? What should define your strategy? And how do you build on the momentum you've created, whether that be in the last year, the last 18 months, however long a campaign cycle is in each of your countries? Campaigns, they often focus intensely on the short term, on winning votes and achieving immediate goals. Now is the time to take a step back and ask yourselves, what defines your movement in the long term? What values, vision, and purpose will you carry forward with you? If you think about what brought people together in the first place, what issues resonate most deeply, and what unique strength sets your group, your campaign, your party apart. By answering these questions, you create a clear, or at least you start to create a clear identity that will guide future actions and help you sustain that engagement you've already worked to collect from your supporters. Next, if we think about your community, every campaign provides a wealth of insight into the people you serve, but it's just the beginning. What more can you learn about your community moving forward? Like I said beforehand, what issues matter most to them? Where are the gaps between what they need and what's available? And by what's available, I mean what you make available to them in the ways that they can then contribute. By listening closely, whether that be through surveys, one-on-one conversations like Michael mentioned, you can deepen your understanding and you can refine your approach. A stronger connection to your community ensures that your movement remains relevant, it remains impactful, and aligned with the people it's meant to serve. Finally, you'll want to consider how you'll build engagement moving forward. A critical question to ask is, what kind of ladders of engagement do we need to create, like Michael mentioned a couple of slides ago? In organizing, ladders of engagement, they represent pathways for people to deepen their involvement. Some supporters may start with a small action, like signing a petition, but they need then clear steps to take on bigger roles, like becoming a volunteer, a leader, or even a potential candidate for a local area. Mapping out these ladders is what helps you identify opportunities for growth and ensures supporters feel valued, feel challenged, feel recognized, and at the end of the day, feel empowered enough to make a difference for themselves. So, as the results sink in and the immediate campaign comes to a close, think about this. How can you use this moment to build something even stronger? Defining your movement's identity, deepening your understanding of your community, and creating clear pathways for people to stay engaged should remain top of mind. This is really how a campaign becomes a lasting movement and one that continues to drive change long after the ballots have been counted. So if we look at what some of these key organizing tactics might be, the first one is a good website. In today's world, your digital infrastructure is very much the backbone of your movement, and at its core is your website. A good website is really not just a digital brochure. It's a dynamic tool for engagement, connection, and growth. It's where supporters can learn about your cause. It's where they can take action and feel like they are truly a part of something bigger than themselves. And more importantly, it's one that demonstrates your credible plan to win. So what makes a website truly effective? First, it needs to be engaging and accessible. The design should capture attention with compelling visuals and content that truly reflect your mission at that moment in time. Next, your website should provide multiple points of entry. Thinking about ladders of engagement, not everyone visiting your site will be ready to take the same action. Some might want to donate, others might be looking for volunteer opportunities, and others may just be curious about who you are as an organization and what your mission is. Your site should make it easy for people to find what they're looking for and also offer options that suit their level of interest. From quick actions like signing up for a newsletter to deeper engagement like joining an event, having multiple entry points ensures that you meet people where they are at with you and your organization at that moment in time. A great website, it doesn't just present information. You want it to guide visitors on a journey. Thoughtful navigation can move supporters from a passive browsing state to an active participatory state. Your website should also reflect the energy and activity of your community. Highlight stories, testimonials, or photos that show the impact of your work and the enthusiasm of the supporters that have already contributed to date. And this isn't also just about showcasing successes, it's about inspiring visitors. When people see others take action, they're more likely to feel motivated to join in the same way that if you see your friend or family tell you to do something, you're more likely to act. An effective website isn't one that remains static. You want it to evolve based on your ability to monitor how people interact with your site. You can identify what's working and what isn't. Looking at that data through click-through rates or time spent on pages or perhaps drop-off points would be a helpful starting place. And finally, your website should help you collect the right data, but you want to be intentional. Don't collect data just because you can. You want to focus on what will help you build stronger relationships and tailor your outreach, which segues us nicely onto the next slide. I mentioned data being the key to targeted and impactful mobilization efforts, but I'm sure this won't be news to anyone here that data must be at the heart of your efforts, not only to inform your decisions, but understand the progress of your campaign. And of course, it is the key to understanding your community to then build targeted relationships with them. After a campaign, there's no lying that your supporter database can become a bit messy, and that's normal. That's why data cleaning efforts should be done regularly. You want to make sure that your data is as up to date as possible and most importantly, accessible. Now that you've got this downtime ahead of you, you might want to focus your energy on going through some duplicates in your nation. You might want to update communication preferences so people are receiving the right type and frequency of email communications from your organization. You might also want to consider looking out for outdated contact details, whether that be an email, a phone number, or even a physical address, and make sure you have the most current information. By keeping your records clean, you ensure that your future outreach is efficient, it's accurate, and it's respectful of your supporters' preferences. If we now look at collecting data, you want to be strategic about it. Too often, we feel like we need to gather everything just because we can. The truth is, collecting unnecessary data, it doesn't help anyone. It just adds noise and it can even frustrate your supporters during that website navigation. Instead, you want to focus on what's missing in your database. What key information would help you better understand and engage your community? For example, maybe you need to know their preferred communication channels or areas of interest. Providing easy ways for supporters to update their information on their own is also important. A simple form or an email request can very much go a long way. And as you do this, you want to be mindful of friction as well. Asking again for too much information or making the process too complicated can deter people from responding at all. You want to keep it simple, clear, and respectful. Supporter journeys. So when it comes to building a movement, the number of supporters you have is of course important, but it's not the only goal. Engagement is what truly makes the difference. You can have a million names in your database, but if those people aren't actively participating, if they're not contributing, if they're not advocating on your behalf, the impact will inevitably fall short. So how do you move beyond the numbers to foster meaningful engagement? You'll first want to start with your top level goals. What is your movement aiming to achieve? Whether it's advancing a specific policy, building local power, or driving cultural change, having a clear vision will shape how you engage your supporters. Once you know what your goals are, you'll ask yourselves what kind of engagement will help us reach them. So here, again, thinking about the different ladders of engagement your supporters might land on. Do you need more volunteers for on-the-ground action? Do you need advocates to help you spread the word online? Donors to sustain your work? Each goal requires a different type of involvement and understanding that is key to crafting an effective engagement strategy. You'll then want to design engagement journeys that lead to high participation. Think of this as creating a roadmap for your supporters. And again, think of paths to do this. Start with small, easy actions like signing a petition or attending an informational meeting. Then you can gradually offer opportunities for deeper involvement, like volunteering, organizing events on your behalf, or even stepping into leadership roles. The key is to make each step logical, achievable, and rewarding. By providing those clear pathways, you help supporters see how they can grow within the movement and make a bigger impact over time. And remember, every journey, again, should reflect the diversity of your community. Different people will be ready for different types of participation, and that's completely fine. The goal is, again, to meet them where they're at and help guide them forward. I'll pass it to
Thanks,
Michael.
Maddie. And so that driving high participation is so key, right? And it is when we're talking about high participation, we're not just talking about showing up to a one-off march or a one-off rally. We're talking about people making frequently long-term commitments over time to give a significant chunk of their time and their energy and their involvement into something. And so building up that initial relationship, that deep connection to the issues that they care about, and also the credible plan to win that you or your campaign or your movement has is so key. And so we'll talk about more about building that strong community to get those ties created. So I talked a bit before about in organizing conversations, you're identifying people's motivations and what are the personal difficulties or challenges that they're experiencing, which then are contributing to the or connect to the systemic issues that your organization or your campaign are trying to address. And so that is something that you can also do with your website, or at the very least, you can have material on your website that can be helping to sort of reinforce those points that you are touching on when you're having those organizing conversations with members in your community. And as you have people making those commitments, they want to get involved. The next question is how, right? And so there are certain levels of volunteering or getting involved that people can do with relatively little preparation. But other types of leadership, maybe it's running a weekly food pantry or it's becoming the volunteer coordinator. Those require training and skill development. And so this is a great time to do that when you're not in the throes of peak election season, where you can have onboarding sessions, you can have training sessions. People can take time to practice with some of the tools and the concepts that you're working with. People can take time to write their own story of self for why or what in their personal story has caused them to get involved, which then makes them a really effective ambassador for your party or your campaign or your organization. And then you can track in NationBuilder who's gone through that, who's gone through a story of self workshop, who has spoken publicly at a city hall public meeting, or they've spoken to a lawmaker at a lobby day, or they're prepared to do that. Tracking who has which skills and which training makes things a heck of a lot easier when it comes time to mobilize and you're looking for volunteers in those key roles, knowing who has the capacity and who's ready to be involved. Those shared experiences of going through onboarding together, going through a training together, being in a discussion group, talking about a current event or a book that is particularly meaningful to the issue or the community that you're organizing within, those can foster strong relationships. And then, of course, listening to feedback and staying in that conversation, hearing what people are telling you about if there are gaps in your plan to win, if they have concerns about the way the campaign is running or about the plan. It is to your benefit to hear those and really listen to them. A big part of this organizing process is talking to people who don't already agree with you. That's one of the biggest differentiators between it and mobilizing. And so, really hearing what people have to say about their concerns and questions is necessary to be able to authentically address those. But also, you're going to learn things about maybe aspects that you need to change regarding your campaign or your plan. When talking about tracking engagement, gamification within your nation can be really helpful because we have this way of tracking points that are earned for different kinds of activity. And internally, it can be used to identify who are those people who are taking action, who are that their participation is increasing. It's a really easy way to quantify that and then know who to prioritize for possible further leadership roles. But when you come to the time to mobilize, you can take that gamification of points earned through taking action, and you can turn it into public leaderboards with, of course, the permission of your supporters that you're, making these leaderboards public. And then you can use that to engender some friendly competition. And so now you've got people who they've been involved for a while. This is part of their identity and kind of part of how they think of themselves as contributing to this cause, to this campaign that they care about. And so having some friendly competition through public leaderboards, or for people even just to set goals for themselves of, I want to be at this level of participation by the end of the month. that can be a really powerful motivator. It can help drive engagement and drive participation when you're in mobilization mode. And so it's going to be specific to your campaign. It's going to be specific to the kind of place that you're at within your year or within your campaign cycle or the fight that you're in the middle of for a particular issue. But they're just really important tools we want you to be aware of. We want to emphasize that organizing is worth it. It's essential. It also takes time and effort. It will be some of the most rewarding and enriching aspects of your life within a campaign, within a movement, within an organization, having these real conversations that a lot of people out there are starved for in the societies that we live in. So don't let the time and effort deter you. It's totally worth it, and it's actually essential to win. And it's doable if you're strategic and if you have the right tools. Organizing needs to be baked into your everyday priorities because it is something that you need to keep track of in the ongoing life of your campaign and your organization. It's not just, oh, we're doing organizing this month or we're doing organizing this quarter. It's got to be baked into your everyday priorities because it's about maintaining relationships. And you probably know from your own lives that relationships that you don't tend to on a consistent basis tend to wither, right? They tend to go away. And you want to keep those strong relationships to drive high participation and commitment. These relationships will make your mobilization efforts effective and lasting. It won't just be a flash in the pan rally. It won't just be a march that maybe makes a headline or one lobby day and then nothing comes of it. You are building consistent leaders in your rank and file who will give you the capacity to reach that next level of change that you've been dreaming of, that is part of the mission, vision, and goals of your organization or your campaign. And lastly, I just want to emphasize that organizing is conversational, but it has to be strategic because it takes so much effort and it takes so much time. You have to prioritize who you are talking to, what you are saying in those organizing conversations and what comes out of them, and tracking those outcomes. The conversations don't happen in NationBuilder or any tool suite, but tracking who you need to have the conversations with and the outcomes of those conversations, those are essential for tracking in NationBuilder, and they will have such huge returns for your organization, your campaign, your election, your movement.